To Vi Higginson, the prospect of tracing even a tiny fraction of her ancestry back to Africa was enthralling. 60 Minutes sent her DNA to African Ancestry, as well as to several other genetic genealogy companies, to see what they could tell us about Vi's maternal lineage.
I'm sitting on the edge of my seat.
Kittle's company sent Vi what they call a certificate of ancestry.
Oh my God.
It says that you share maternal genetic ancestry with people from the Mendi tribe in Sierra Leone. Do you know anything about Sierra Leone or the Mendi people?
No.
Nothing.
Nothing.
People have been waiting a lifetime for something like this. Now, this is just a tiny bit of information now.
But they take it as huge.
Right, because it's cracking open the door that was closed for centuries.
There's a place in Africa you could say that I'm from. A tribe? I am thrilled. It puts a name, a place, a location, a people. It opens up such possibilities.
But the problem is, Sierra Leone wasn't the only answer Vi got. A company called Relative Genetics found a match to a single person in the Wobi tribe in the Ivory Coast.
Different?
Different.
Now, I got all excited about that, and this is different. Now, how could that happen?
Then a third company, Trace Genetics. Your particular sequence matches sequences reported among multiple Mendenka individuals in Senegal.
What's up with this?
And Family Tree DNA, the company that linked Vi with Marion in the first place, came up with a whole list of matches. This goes on and on.
My goodness.
So what do we know about Vi's ancestry? The DNA does indicate that she has distant relatives in the Mende tribe, but she also has relatives in all those other tribes. So no one can say for sure where Vi's maternal ancestor actually came from. When I handed Vi the certificate, she got extremely emotional about it. She wept, and it meant so very much.
People want to believe.
They want to believe they've gotten an answer.
And it's not fair of us to let them believe that we're giving them certain answers, because scientifically, we just can't. And it's not fair of us to let them believe that we're giving them certain answers, because scientifically, we just can't.
Hank Greeley is concerned that the science isn't really there yet for you to be giving them the name of a tribe.
I think for most companies, I would be concerned too.
But what about your own company?
We have
he
the
didn't
largest...
exclude you. He included you.
But we have the largest set of sequences from Africa. And so with that, we're able to provide some level of probability in terms of frequency.
But he would say that even though you have the largest database, it's still small on the scope of things.
As I said, I share those concerns.
About yourself.
Our DNA.
And that's the rub. This business of genetic genealogy is fraught with limitations. For one thing, it can only provide information about a tiny fraction of our ancestry. Because we get half our DNA from our mothers and half from our fathers, almost all of our DNA gets shuffled and remixed every generation, making it impossible to trace what comes from whom. There are just 2 bits of DNA that remain pure: the Y chromosome, which passes directly from father to son, and something called mitochondrial DNA, which passes unchanged from mother to child. Hank Greeley, a law professor at Stanford University, has studied this new field. He worries that people don't realize just how many ancestors they actually have.
8 generations ago, both you and I had 256 great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents.
Wait, you're saying that if you go back 8 generations, we have 256 great-great-great-grandparents?
Yes, it doubles every generation. So you've got 2 parents, you have 4 grandparents, you have 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great-grandparents, and it adds up fast. It adds up so fast, in fact, that if you go back 20 generations, you've got over 1 million.
Kayuk, everyone. The video that you're about to watch is going to share some information with you regarding the scamboozle that is called genetic testing or DNA testing. I did not produce the video, but I did get permission from the producer to re-upload this video in its entirety to my channel so you can watch it. And I told them that I would put a link back to their channel. The video was produced by Tavis and his mom, and there's some very good information in there you're going to be surprised to hear about. One of the reasons I wanted to post this video to my channel so you could see it is because I've been getting some questions from people regarding DNA testing and things of that nature, because I know it's a scam, which is why I don't touch it. I don't deal with it. And I know that the Hamites are confederate with the Japhethites, and they are basically attempting to remove us from our lands and amalgamate us into Ham's family tree. Because remember, we're told in our writings that they want the name of Shem to disappear. Right? They want our lands and territories. When you read in the book of Jubilees, which is a land deed, that's exactly what it is. It's a document that details land deeds, who inherited what. It tells us that Japheth and his descendants inherited the cold regions. So you go up into the Arctic, over in the always cold regions of Alaska. Who do you see? The so-called Eskimos. They are related to the Siberians. You see, those people crossed the Bering Strait and invaded our territories here in the Americas long before the pale man did, long before whites, Caucasian. In one of my videos, I shared some information with you where you saw an interview of Chief Warhorse Gillum. She's from the Choctaw tribe. There's a fake tribe called Choctaw that is comprised of Mongolians. Those are not the original Choctaw people. It's a fake name that they made up to create a clone tribe. And Chief Gillum actually talks about how they basically watched what our people were doing. They copied our ways. They created fake clone tribes. And that's why they squat on our land now with all these casinos. And they have basically robbed your land of its resources. Doesn't really produce a whole lot now. This reminds me of what I read in the book of Genesis, because those people who are ignorant of the facts will tell you, oh, the Bible is a white man's book. No, they were illiterate. And furthermore, our writings were originally written in a Shemitic language, not a Germanic one. Okay, that's what English is. It's a Germanic tongue. But our enemies took our ancestral writings and translated them. They took the truth and hid it behind a veil, okay, behind an unclean language. And that was allowed because our ancestors were told from the beginning to never make treaties with these invasive, highly invasive species, to not intermarry with them. See, our ancestors were mixing like there was no tomorrow. The Most High sent the Baseta, you know them as the beast. That's how it's pronounced in English. Those Caucasians, those whites, to clear it all out. And that was done. But see, at the same time, our slaves who we owned, the Canaanites were our subjects. King David had slaves. And for those of you who are whining about the fact that, what? You had slaves? You can't be from our people. Because yes, Israelites had slaves. Hebrew people had servants. And when we were invaded, our servants were taken, and then we were made servants on our own property. We were made to work our own lands. The food that grew from it, we could not eat it. Our invaders ate it. They consumed the product of our forced labor. So, I thought it pertinent to share this information that Tavis put together. Because, like I said, you're going to learn some very interesting information. And as I mentioned, I think in Genesis it tells us that Japheth will dwell in the tents of Shem. And if you speak our language, you already know the word tent translates to lands and properties. And they would assume our identities. And that's exactly what they have done. There's no such thing as Cherokee people. It's fake. It's a made-up tribe. That's not how we pronounce our name. Even the word Chickasaw. That's not how it's truly pronounced. That's how the foreigners pronounce, because they couldn't say our words correctly. But when you look on the Dawes roll and you see my family, and it says that all my family members are full-blood Chickasaw, and when you look up information about the Chickasaw tribe, you see these Mongoloids. Well, how is it that they have us listed on the Dawes roll as full-blood Chickasaw, my family members? And we're all so-called Negroes. There's not one Mongolian in our family, not even one. So you see, you have to open your eyes to what's really going on around you and the fact that there are people out there who want what you have, want what is yours. And they will pretend to be your friend while they're scheming against you at the same time to take what you have. You know the story, Lord of the Rings, about the invasion of Middle Earth? Do you know Middle Earth is Shemland? That's where the expression comes from. Read the Book of Jubilees. You're going to see the expression Middle Earth in there. But in particular, read chapter 8. Read the land deeds. You'll see Ham inherited the territories. It's always hot, which is why the Hamites are still on their properties to this very day. Japheth inherited territories that is always cold, which is why the Eskimos live up there in the cold regions of Alaska, the always cold regions of Alaska and the Arctic. And they're from Siberia. It's freezing cold over there. It always is. And the Mongoloids and the Siberians live there to this very day. They come from Japheth. They live on their home territories. Our writings tell us this. We don't have to fish around into all this speculation trying to figure out who's who. Our writings tell us who's who. But when you're trying to make yourself fit into somewhere you don't belong, then yeah, you're going to go looking for other things, right? Because I shared some information with someone the other day about the Khazars. And those Khazars refer to themselves as Jews. We know they're not. It tells us in our writings, those who say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Well, the information that I shared was from a blog owned by one of those Khazarians who refer to themselves as Jews and are not. In the blog post that he wrote, he exposed the fact that there were so-called Jewish geneticists who had exposed the fact that those people who refer to themselves as Jews and are not are actually nothing but Europeans. Caucasians, Germans, Turks, the exact same thing I've been saying ever since I've been posting videos about this. The information hasn't changed because it's factual. So over there you have these group of people who are pretending to be us. Over here you have these Mongoloids pretending to be us and the Altai people pretending to be us. And then you have people who look like us, so-called Negro people, who have taken their sides. It's so sad. What's also sad is that there are people who look like us who would actually go to their enemies for validation. First of all, these very same individuals invaded your lands, are still squatting on these lands, and you think they're going to use their technology to prove these lands belong to you? You are a fool. Now there's an interview I saw that was on 60 Minutes, and they were interviewing a geneticist, one who works here in the States, I think, and one who has some genetic testing labs over in Africa, a Hamite. Now he's going out of his way to test the so-called Black Americans or so-called Negroes here in the Americas. And then once he gets their results back, he tells them, oh, well, you belong to this tribe in Africa. So he's confederate with our enemies as well. It actually tells us in our writings that Ham is confederate with Gog. Ham and Gog. That's what it says. So right now they're trying to push that race mixing agenda. They're pushing really hard to shove that down your collective throats. And to really drive it home, they have put a Hamite, half Caucasian president in your face. But he's just a little puppet, that's all. He does what they tell him to do, and if he doesn't, well, he's going to get a chance to experience what JFK didn't want to experience but did. So, take a look at this video. Thanks, Tavis, for allowing me to post this. And I hope you all are able to get some really good information out of this. I'm telling you, you're going to hear something in here that you never heard before, because the information they share about whose genetic material they compare yours against when you send in your test is going to blow your mind. I had no clue at all. Because like I said, I don't let them scamboozle me into taking those tests so they could tell me a lie about who I come from. When I know who I come from, I have all of my family records. I'm not going to let a Hamite who's coveting my lands lie to me, and I'm not going to let a Japhethite who's coveting my lands. I mean, you can kind of understand why Japhethites would want to steal your land, right? I mean, you inherit a freezer box as property. I guess you would do whatever you have to get out of there as well. But anyway, Enjoy the vid. I'm going to post links, like I said, right under this video in the description box. You can click on those links to go to Tavis's channel and take a look at some of the videos they have on there. If you're in Philly, go check them out. You're not going to agree with everything they say. They have a video up where they make a mistake and imply that our people became indigenous by mixing with Mongoloids and Altay people. Oh no, we are Shemitic people. These are our lands that we inherited. We were invaded by Mongolians and Altay and Caucasians, not the other way around. And we're told in our writings that Japheth will dwell in our lands and try to steal them. Not us trying to take their lands from them. Who wants a freezer box? Nobody wants that. So, if you come across that video where they make that claim, just know that, more than likely you're going to be offended, and you should. Don't be afraid to correct people when they make mistakes or trying to imply that you're something you're not. It is time for you to start putting these people in their place and let them know, yeah, you stole the land in the past, but this time you're going to have a fight on your hands. And the Most High has already told us that as long as we return to His laws, as long as we return to those laws and live them, when that battle takes full swing, right, the Most High is going to have our back. Using the terminology they use nowadays, you won't have to worry about a thing. Because right now, what you don't realize is that you're battling an ancient enemy. And our ancestors called Baal or Baal. Our prophets had to deal with Baal. You're going to have to deal with them as well. And now is the time. So, anyway, enough of this introduction. Watch the video. You can go over there and, chat with Tavis if you like to. I don't know if he's on his channel. Leave him a message. I'm sure he'll reply. And, again, thanks, Tavis, for letting me upload this. All right, everybody, I'll talk to you soon. Oh, you know what? Mr. Canton, I did receive your messages and I did reply. But I am very busy. I have almost 500 questions and comments in my YouTube box alone that I have yet to reply to. And I get private messages sent to me. I get text messages sent to me by so many different people. And I've already explained that more than likely I will not be able to answer individual questions that are sent to me like that. I don't have that kind of time. I'm a very busy person. I do what I can when I can, and that's just about all I can do. As I've explained about the language, if you're from my family tree, I'll teach you the language. You just have to bring me your Dawes Rolls records. For anyone who wants to learn our language, bring me the Dawes Rolls records to show me which tribe your family is. It's just simple as that. Okay, so, I know how to research the records and trace your ancestry. So that's all you have to do. Bring me those records if you want to meet. And I know I was sent a question by someone, I won't say who wanted to meet me on my ancestral lands. That's not going to happen because I don't know you. I was contacted by someone recently who informed me of someone who was making stalkish type videos, and I'm not going to pretend that I didn't know that. I already knew that. But I am glad that you contacted me. Thank you. You know who you are. And but I don't entertain those type people because they're not a part of our family tree anyway. So I don't give them the time of day. I just don't. They don't exist as far as I'm concerned. That individual who you were referring to, I had to block them. They told me that they were part Irish, and I explained to them that you mix with Caucasian, you are automatically marked out of our family tree. That's in the Book of Baal, the so-called Bible. I don't make those rules, but I do live by them. And so, as I explained to that person, I won't be teaching them our language. I won't be teaching them anything that has to do with our customs and culture because they are marked out of our family tree. This is how we preserve our bloodlines. Now, for those of you who want to mix yourself out of existence, you go right on ahead. Your names will just be blotted out. And that's in our writings. So, anyway, on that note, I'm going to close this out, and I will be speaking with you all very soon.
It's the same hustle, it's the same thing, the same tears on everything. Maybe one day we'll see we're one big family, like it's one.
Greetings and welcome to An American Deception. I'm your host, Red Tail Hawk, also known as Tavis Sanders. Would like to welcome our co-host, Red Silver Fox, also known as Renee Sanders.
Greetings, everyone.
I know it's been a while, but we have a couple of things lined up for y'all. If you are a subscriber to our YouTube page, then you'll have noticed that over the past few months, we've started a new series entitled Moments, where my mother gives a lot of information on specific moments in history that we would like to talk about, discuss, or even maybe just point out. So, you know, if you're not, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can check those out. And we have a couple more shows coming out for you. Today's topic is DNA, the new one-drop rule.
Okay, let's get started.
Yeah. Speaking of DNA, again, you know, we'd like to welcome my mother, Renee Silver Fox. Me and her, we were discussing this, and we found some real interesting information. You know, we're not scientists, and we want to make sure that y'all understand that first.
But we have run across this information, and we just thought it was important information to pass on to everyone.
Yeah. So, you know, you'll be able to find this information everywhere, but it's very important, and I don't think that a lot of people know this information, you know, especially from the topics of conversation that have been on the YouTube channels and some of the emails that we've been getting, and some of the questions. A lot of people have questions about this DNA testing and how it relates to your ancestry.
Yes.
You know, so we figured, hey, let's, you know, share some information with people. Let's talk about it. We're talking about DNA, and specifically the DNA and genetic ancestry testing.
Yes, which is a different type of testing,
right,
using the DNA. There's several types of testing.
Mm-hmm.
And then really, as far as the genetic testing is concerned, there are three types of genetic testing. But let's first just discuss what the genetic testing is.
Okay.
And according to Genetics Home Reference, which is a service of the United States National Library of Medicine, and they say that genetic testing or genetic genealogy is a way for people interested in family history or their genealogy to go beyond what they can learn from relatives or from historical documentation.
Okay.
So that is what they say that genetic testing is.
Okay. So they're saying that you can use it to find more information than you might, you know, some information you may not have been able to find in government documents.
Yes, that's
birth
correct.
certificates and stuff like that.
And also what you may not have heard from relatives.
Okay.
Or, you know, maybe something to confirm what you have heard from relatives.
Okay. So they're gonna tell us the truth.
Well, that's what people think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're gonna see. Let's see how much truth is coming out of these DNA testing.
Right. Okay. But first of all, there are three different types of genetic testing.
Okay.
And well, really, is basically two different types. Mm-hmm. But the third type is a type that they use from one of the types. So I'll just explain those. Okay. One type of testing is just the Y chromosome testing. And the Y chromosome testing is when they use the chromosomes that have been passed exclusively from father to son.
Okay, so they're testing your father's side.
The father's side of the family.
Okay.
So females will not be able to do this. They would have to get a male
different
relative.
test, because we'll get to that test next.
Yes.
Okay.
Then you have mitochondrial DNA testing.
Right.
Okay. And the mitochondrial DNA testing, it provides information on the direct female ancestral line.
Okay.
So this tests the female side. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is interesting though is that men do carry the mitochondrial DNA, but they do not pass it on to to their offspring.
Right.
So a male can do a mitochondrial DNA testing along with the females.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
yeah, so both male and female can do the mitochondrial testing. Okay, it's just that the males do not pass that on to their
To the next strain,
Right.
to the next generation.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
it's only transferred through the mother.
through the mother.
All right, and
in
then
the female line,
all right, and so pause. So we have two testing. We have the Y test and the mitochondrial test,
which is the X test.
which is the X
Yeah.
test. Okay, so the Y test and the X test.
Right.
One test for male and one test for the female.
Right. That's
And then we have the third test.
the third test, which is called single nucleotide polymorphism.
Okay. All right.
And it's also, they call it SNP testing.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
And this testing, it says it is to provide an estimate of a person's ethnic background by observing ancestral markers or mutations, which are little changes that occur in the genetic code of the mitochondrial DNA.
Okay. So for the third testing, just to make sure that the audience is clear. So when they're testing you for your ethnicity, or when they're doing that cultural test that a lot of people are trying to do to figure out where they came from, or if they have any Native American blood in them, or whatever you're testing for, they're using the female test.
They're using
It's
the
not a
mitochondrial.
separate-
Yes,
yeah.
they're using the mitochondrial DNA, and they're looking for little mutations or little things that change that will show them
Signify a different ethnic path.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So those are the three tests.
Those are the three tests. Yes.
Okay, so now that we have overview of the test itself, let's take a step back and let's talk about the test for a second.
Okay.
There's a lot of misinformation going on around in reference to where the test came from, what it relates to, and how it's used. And so, let's clear up some of the myths about that and figure out, what's really going on with this test.
Okay. All right. Well, in 1981.
Yes.
Okay, 1981 is when they finally figured out the entire DNA sequence.
Okay.
And this was done in London. And it was really, placenta really was provided
Okay.
from a local hospital.
Okay. Cool.
And the placenta was from a European male in London.
Okay.
And this was the person that they did the testing on. They used the placenta and they did testing until they finally figured out the whole DNA chain. Okay, which happened in 1981.
Okay, so that was the first time in '81. It was the first time that a DNA sequence had been published
And totally completed.
Okay.
And published. Yes.
Okay.
And so it was published by Cambridge University in England.
Okay.
And and this person whose DNA that they used, it was called the Cambridge Reference Sequence, or the CRS.
Okay.
Okay.
CRS. We want to remember that for later, but the CRS.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, in the 1990s, they noticed that there were some little things and a couple of little hiccups a couple little mistakes that they wanted to correct.
Okay.
So they went back, and now what they have is an RCRS, which is the revised.
Okay.
It's just a revised version, but it's still using the original placenta, so nothing has really changed as far as that DNA sequence is
Okay.
is concerned.
All right, and so let's backtrack before we continue. So in 1980, Cambridge University, 1981, 82, they published the DNA sequence from a placenta donated by a European male. Well,
The mother.
I'm sure the European male he donated his
Right.
placenta, but nonetheless, they sequenced it, and now we have a DNA of a legit DNA pattern. We have the whole sequence here,
Right.
And it's called the CRS, or Cambridge Reference Sequence,
Right.
And now we have the R, which is the revised.
The revised.
Nonetheless, this sequence here.
Yes.
Now
And this sequence is now what they call ground zero.
ground zero. Okay.
Right. And it is the DNA. That is the DNA that all DNA is compared to.
Okay, so let's pause for a minute because that matters.
Oh,
That-
yes.
It matters deeply. Now, and so we're not. So what we're saying is that someone that was born in 1981, around 1980s, DNA was sequenced, and this is the reference sequence that we compare everybody else's DNA to.
Yes.
So we don't compare it to, as I've heard some say, Lucy
Right.
or mitochondrial Eve. We don't compare it to anything beyond 1980. It starts at 1981 with that Cambridge reference sequence.
Right, that's correct. And most people do not realize that. You know, most people would think, because, again, you would think that if you're doing this sequencing, that it would be done from the earliest DNA
right, that they can
that
find.
you can find.
Right.
Okay.
Well, human
Now-
DNA.
Yes, human DNA. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, because
Well,
all,
wait a
living
second.
all living things have DNA.
Well, and just to hold for a second, for those who think that Lucy was used as the DNA pattern to sequence everybody, well, Lucy was not even human.
Lucy was not human.
So she was not a Homo sapiens.
She was not a Homo sapien.
So it doesn't.
So she preceded Homo sapiens.
And so she wouldn't even really. It really wouldn't even make sense for us to try to use Lucy's DNA patterns to sequence us.
That's correct, because there would be differences.
Right, because they're different
because she
species.
was not. Yeah, yes, she was not a modern human.
Okay, and again, just to make sure y'all understand, Lucy was not used as the reference sequence to do the DNA analysis for your genetic ancestry.
Okay, and I also want to point this out, though. It says that that comparing, you know, it would make sense to compare our DNA to the earliest human. All right, but it says, however, it says that is not how the research community has decided to approach mitochondrial DNA. The consensus within the scientific community is that mitochondrial DNA is always compared to CRS. Now, there is a testing out which is called the reconstructed sapiens reference sequence, okay? Which is called RSRS, okay?
Okay.
All right, but they use the DNA from the mitochondrial Eve. All
Okay.
right, not Lucy, but mitochondrial Eve. They do use that DNA, okay? It says, however, and this is also coming from the United States National Library of Medicine, they state, it is therefore neither necessary nor sensible to change the present reference sequence, the RCRS, in any way. The proposed switch to RSRS would inevitably lead to notational chaos, mistakes, and misinterpretations. This is what they say, and so this is why they do not want to go to mitochondrial Eve. They
Right.
just want to leave it at the CRS.
And this the United States National. Who's saying this?
Okay, this is the United States National Library of Medicine.
Okay, and so although it could be a better test out there that would sequence individuals from a better perspective, us as human beings, they're not going to use this test because it's just going to cause too much chaos.
Too much confusion.
Because they've been using this system for so long, we might as well keep it the same.
Oh, yes, that's the 90s.
Since the 90s.
that's too long.
This is too well, you know, let's before we go. Matter of fact, before we go, let me just point out that even that sequence system has its issues. You know, because that sequence, the sequence in where they reference the Homo sapiens, they're testing individuals from today's location and not necessarily the individual's location in ancient times, or as it doesn't take into account migration patterns of individuals.
Right, so they're taking modern humans who are, well, let's just say in Africa.
Okay.
So they're using the modern humans that are right in Africa in the areas today.
So let's say that they could literally test white African from South America, consider them African, and now the testing could be flawed in some way because this person is not necessarily indigenous to that part of the country.
That's correct.
You know, and they're not taking that in consideration.
That's correct, and they haven't done that in anywhere. You know, so you know, in Europe, Africa, wherever, you know, the
Americas.
people have traveled
Right.
over tens of thousands of years, and so if you're in a place today, it does not mean that your ancestors were there 2,000 years ago, 200 years ago.
Okay. Well, you know, it's a lot more to discuss about this
Yes.
topic. So let's take a small break, and we'll be right back.
It's the same hustle, it's the same thing, same tears on the we pay. Maybe one day we'll see we're one big family, like it's one shadow. same sunshine, the same rain, the same struggle, just to maintain. Maybe one day we will see we're one big family, like it's one channel. Yeah. Somebody found working fingers to the bone. Somebody got a cousin getting that thug feels alone. Somebody fam got weight on the block, AKs on the block, might spray on the block, y'all. Somebody fam still on welfare, oh yeah. Somebody on the grind for daycare, oh yeah. You got thugging in your family tree, then somebody out there kidding me. Everybody say it's the same hustle, same thing, same tears on everything. Maybe one day we'll see we're one big family.
Welcome back to An American Deception. We just got finished speaking about DNA, and we just went over a few things such as the 3 tests that they give, and we spoke about the reference sequence and when it was established and what they use as the foundation to test everyone else off of. Okay, so now that we have that background information, you know, we know that it's from this time period, from, you know, this European individual, and not from anything prior, you know, to her. Let's talk about the test itself and what they're actually testing for when they do each one of these tests.
Okay. Well, when they do the genetic testing, they are, and let me refer to my paper here. Okay. When you're testing, you're either testing the Y DNA or the mitochondrial DNA, which is going to give you information about your father's father's father or your mother's mother's mother. However, it doesn't give you anything in between.
Okay, so in between. You're following your father's father's father, and you're following your mother's mother's mother, but you're not hitting anybody in between. Please, you know, explain that for us.
Okay, so now, if you're testing your 4 great-grandmothers, okay,
right.
You and all your brothers and sisters have inherited the mitochondrial DNA from your maternal grandmother's mother, all right?
Okay, so
that's your grandmother's mother. The other 3 great-grandmothers that you have not contributed to your DNA.
As far
So that means that your mother's, you know, your great-grandfather didn't contribute.
Okay.
Your father's grandmother did not contribute,
Okay.
and your father's grandfather did not contribute.
Okay.
So none of those people have contributed to your DNA. However, if they, you know, so you're missing out on 7 of your 8 grandparents, great-grandparents.
Right, so they're not even going to test for anyone else. They're
No.
just going to follow just this one line.
Just the one line.
Ignoring the fact that in order for this one line to occur, you have to have had so many different branches of offshoots. You know, you have to have grandparents on both sides. You have to have great-grandparents that come from both sides of both of those sides.
Yes.
The family tree grows and grows and grows.
Yes.
But they're excluding the family tree.
They're excluding just about all of the family tree.
Okay.
You know? So if you take into consideration of your great grandparents, all right, if your father's grandfather was a Native American,
Okay.
it's not going to show up in your DNA. Even if your grandmother's father was a Native American, it is not going to show up in the DNA testing.
Okay.
So again, 7 of your 8 grandparents, great-grandparents, could be Indian, but it's not going to show up in your DNA test because they're only testing that one person that is the direct maternal line.
The further back in time we go, the more people they are excluding out of your out of your history.
That's correct. So if you go back as far as, let's see, your great-great-great-grandparents, you had 32 of them.
Okay, right.
31 of them
Will not be counted.
will not be counted.
Wow. Well, let's talk about this is only for the mitochondria, or is this for both the mitochondrial test and the DNA test? I'm
the
sorry, and the
Y.
Y test, yeah.
Well, it works the same way.
It works with
It works the same way because, again, when you're doing the Y DNA testing, you're only testing the father and the father's father, the father's father's father, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it is still doing the same thing. You are still omitting most of the people. And the thing is this, is that not only, now, again, we have to remember that when they do identify, well, let's say they're identifying someone as a Native American.
Okay.
And they call those little markers, they call them haplotypes, you know. And so now, if that great-great-grandmother did not have one of the 5 haplotypes that are designated as Native American, then they're still not going to be identified as Native American.
Okay, well, let's pause there for a second. And so they have these markers that they identify as being, which would identify someone from being of a particular culture or a particular area or region.
Yes.
And so as far as Native Americans are concerned, they have tested 5 groups.
They have identified 5.
They have identified 5.
5, yes.
Out of, have they tested all of the different or various Native Americans?
Okay, well, see, that's the thing.
Right.
There were thousands of tribes when the Europeans arrived here, you know.
Right.
Even today, even as far as the BIA is concerned,
Exactly.
there's like 450 some, I do believe, tribes that are recognized tribes within the United States.
And that's not even going to include the unamalgamated tribes.
That's correct. It's not. It's not even including those, and they have not tested everyone from each one of those tribes. And so it's like, so we still don't know if they have identified all of the Native American markers.
Because they only have 5 groups for the Native American population itself. We have to question the test in the first place because it's excluding some of us.
Yes, because again, they haven't tested all of the tribes.
It's excluding some of their own recognized tribes.
It may be. It may be. And until they do all of that testing, we will never know.
All right, well, let's go back. Okay, so now that we understand that, let's go back to the chart for a second because something seems very, very eerily similar to me with respects to this conversation. And so we're going to go back. And, you know, let's go back to some of the colonial laws and discuss how this DNA test, to me, really represents a newer version of colonial laws. Let's speak about we could talk about the 1/4 or the 1/16.
Yes.
You know, we could speak about the 1-drop rule. And then, you know, and let's compare some charts. Let's compare a chart of a colonial law referencing slaves and his DNA test, and let's see how similar these charts are.
Well, really, if we talk about our great-great-grandparents,
Okay, right.
Okay, the chart really looks exactly the same as the 1/16 rule that they had for Native Americans back in the early 1900s. There were legislative acts which stated that if you had 1/16 or more black blood or slave blood, then you were considered African in descent.
Right.
So again.
So you could have 15 great-grandparents that were from
that were Native
Americans. One that was identified as a Negro, whether and again, they could have been Native American, they could not have been, but just because they were identified as a Negro or a slave, or now you're African. And again, you know, if we put this chart next to a chart that's that will reference your DNA, it's the same chart.
It is the same chart, and it is showing the same thing. It is showing that out of your 16 great-great-grandparents, 15 of them could have been full-blooded Indians, Native Americans, but because of that one that was identified as a Negro, that means that you would be considered a Negro even though most of your ancestry is Native American.
Yeah, and then we can take it a step further because then you go back to that 1-drop rule. And again, the further and back in time these DNA tests will take you, the more and more individuals they will leave out of your family history. And again, with that 1-drop rule, you go back any further and further, it doesn't matter to them, if that one person is identified, no matter who else is in your family tree, you are who you are, and it doesn't matter to us.
That's correct.
Yes. All right. And so, before we wrap it up, this is something that, I find it's sad, but it's real.
Yes.
And, let's talk about what they do with these tests once they get these tests from you. I mean, do you want to talk before,
Well, it's interesting what we just recently ran across.
All right. So, let's really talk about this. So, we have a couple of people on our that send us comments. A couple of people will send us their sequencing tests from places, Ancestry.com, some of the other places, and they, well, this is what my DNA sequence said. And basically, what you're doing is you're sending a sample of your blood to these organizations, and they're doing these testings. They test this against your blood.
Okay, well, not necessarily blood, because they could just do a swab.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
They could get your DNA from anywhere now.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're doing swabs now.
Okay. Yeah, so they do swabs now, and they sequence you, and they figure out who you are, and they send you back to test. What else do they do with these tests?
Yes, and what do they do with the results?
Yeah, what do they do with the results? And I take a look at it. Go look up online and see for yourself what they do with these results. It's in Iowa. They're talking about an issue where Ancestry.com actually gave their database to a police precinct that was looking for a murderer. They thought that they found somebody that DNA matched. They tricked him into coming back into the state, locked him up, only to find out that it was not him. And his father was the person that actually donated his, gave him a sample so that he can get his DNA sequence. And, 10 years later, his son is getting locked up for a crime that he didn't commit, on a trick that the police precinct played against him off some false information that Ancestry.com gave them in reference to a DNA. So you got to really consider, not only who is giving you this test, what they're basing these tests off of, and what's their motive for giving you the answers that you are getting, but what they're doing with your information afterwards. You really got to be careful about what you are offering to the public.
You may not know where your DNA is going to end up.
And I'm sorry, but I'll have to say, just like I've found a lot of other scientists say, which is that, this could amount to some sorts of fraudulent activity on some individuals' parts, because they're telling you that they can give you something that they actually cannot.
Right, because they really cannot tell you your ancestry by just tracing only one individual out of the hundreds, and further back you go, thousands of people who are in your ancestry. There's no way that they can tell you all of that information.
Right. And so, I guess that we can wrap it up from here. We spoke about how the testing was done. We informed people, check it out for yourself, the CRS, the Cambridge Reference Sequence. That way you could figure out, for yourself how this testing is done, when it was started, what was the reference sequence, who it came from, and what the time stamp that it came from. We spoke about the Y test, the mitochondrial test, and then the SNP test. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. And then we spoke about how, this can actually, it actually is very, very similar, and actually can interchange with some of these colonial laws. Again, like I said, it's like the new one-drop rule.
It's almost, it seems like a form of genocide as far as Native Americans are concerned.
All over again, and a mental genocide, rather than that physical genocide. Let's just totally erase them by offering them things that are not proven, are not scientifically sound. And although we know these things not to be, we're going to sell them to you as they are, because, it's capitalism at its finest.
Yeah, that's what America was built on.
Oh, man. Well, I guess that's the end of our show for today. I think it was a really interesting show. I hope y'all learned a lot of information. We'll be back. We have a couple other shows lined up for y'all. We're hoping to be able to keep your attention. Again, remember, subscribe to us if you haven't yet, to our YouTube channel. Take a look at us on our website, which is indeed-edu.org. We have our Facebook page, Indigenous Education, Indeed. What else? Do we have anything else?
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. And, email us. You can almost email us at anamericandeception@gmail.com. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, or if you have any opinions for another topic for us, please let us know. We hope to see y'all soon again. Peace.
Peace.